No time to waste. Let's get it.
Why is it that men and women have different prison systems?
Why do men and women have different prison systems? I'm fully in favor of.
I know, but couldn't you say, Your Honor, there are some women who are stronger than men, and there are some men, and vice versa and stuff, and appeal to these particulars. But isn't it the case that a prison system is a perfect example of the generality that I'm actually arguing from?
Sure, but now you're making ought claims. On what basis are you making ought claims?
I didn't make an ought claim.
Well, you're saying men and women ought to be in different...
I said descriptively the case, there's a reason why they are.
But that reason is based in an ought claim. Of course it is.
Do we have a duty to keep women away from outside of men's prisons?
Do we have a duty?
Yeah.
I mean, I think a society should...
From your point of view.
I think what you're doing is you're specifying duties really specifically. The duty is not to keep women out of men's prisons. The duty is to keep people who are more vulnerable.
Women.
Not always necessarily. I don't think we should.
Who commits more aggressive acts against?
Of course, it's men. I'm not arguing that it's not men, but I think that in principle we should keep a man that is weaker away from a woman who is a serial killer.
Well, that's a particular. I'm talking about prisons, though. So why is it in your ideal feminist society? Why is it that if you're fighting for equality, why is it you still have separate prisons?
What do you mean? I'm not. Well, here's the thing that I put in my feminism thing. We're not.
For common sense reasons. You don't have to destroy feminism through that, but I don't know what argument the other guy is making, but common sense. Common sense, man. Some of these arguments, man.
Denying that there are disparities or differences. We don't deny that there's disparities or differences between groups of men. That doesn't mean that we think that
I still ask you why, though. The question was, why in your society are you obligated, from your perspective you're arguing tonight, to keep prisons separate?
Who is obligated? Society as a whole?
Is your ideal society? Look, it's Oliver's world right now. Oliver is saying feminism is good for society. That means there's a type of society that appeals to feminism and practices it. I'm asking you from an outsider. Pretend I'm like I'm visiting, and I'm like, why do you guys separate your prisons? What's your answer?
I think we should largely separate prisons because, there are differences between men and women. And I don't think. And I think that men, if men are, especially men who are violent, especially men who are in prison, who have shown a lack of care for the safety of those around them, I think we should also ensure that men aren't hurting other men in prison either.
Okay.
I can tell when someone's lying. It's kind of a thing I do.
You redhead alley cat. Who you can argue?
My name's...
I don't know.
So now I'm going to ask you, if you argue that women are generally, collectively more vulnerable than men, and that's why it's good reason, I'm not arguing that there aren't some weak men that could be protected from stronger men, but we're talking about male-female here.
Why, though?
Why are we talking
Why
about
don't we go... Because you are creating two categories, and I'm saying that...
Do they exist?
Of course the categories exist, but you are making the claim that because... Y is weaker than X, right?
General
rule. As a general rule, Y is weaker than X. Therefore, we have an obligation. We should, have separate, prisons or something like that. Why can't we do that intra-gender, if that makes sense?
Well, if you agree that there's a good reason to have women and men's prisons separated, then I'm going to ask you, where's the threshold where you no longer follow that rule outside of the prison?
What do you...
I'm asking, where else in society are you willing to separate the women for the same reason?
Willing to separate women for the same reason?
Yeah.
I don't know.
For instance, let's get...
Sports. Bathrooms. Camps, if they want to. Some summer camps could be all-women camps. Schools can some be all-women schools and all-male schools. I don't think it really destroys the point of feminism to have separation between the genders. And that's my argument against, I guess, the male feminist. It doesn't really change anything to have separation between the genders. To recognize biology is not an issue. It's not an issue. I don't understand. I don't understand that guy's argument.
Give you a particular example. Is it better in your ideal feminist society that a weak woman is at home with her children and her husband at 11:30 p.m., or signing out of her penthouse office with her lanyard, coming down the elevator at 11:30 p.m., potentially the victim of a male crime?
I think you are reducing what is best for women like a homogenous level or a group that's going to be best
just one
for each of
example.
them. No, I don't.
What's better?
Well, you're saying what's better because you're assuming that this woman is going to like be assaulted or something.
Well,
like that.
no,
and I don't. And yeah, I would rather not have a woman get assaulted, of course.
Hold on.
The
What's more
solution
likely, though?
No, but the solution to that problem is not to say, okay, we need to keep all women in the home because men can't stop raping them. Like that's not really how we should operate.
Well, no. Well, actually, the fact that it's mostly men raping women goes to my point that the specific argument tonight, it comes back to the force doctrine every single time. It's never the case where you're going to be collectively writing rules and basically making society around this view that we should protect men from women ever, right?
We should protect men from everyone.
But no, I'm saying generally speaking, we don't structure society in a way that gears toward the concern of women aggressing men. It's usually the other way around, right?
I mean, I think we should do both.
We kind of do, though. If a woman is an aggressor, she can go to prison. If a woman does something wrong, she can go to jail. Society is structured to protect everybody, all genders. Now, I don't understand the point Chad's making here. Society is, it's not that I don't understand, I get the point, but society is to protect all genders. That's how we've set up society. Does it benefit more towards women because of the aggressive nature of men? 1,000%. But men can definitely benefit from the system as well from aggressive natured women. The elevator thing coming down, I think was a ridiculous example because her staying in the house can get broken into when you're not there and get unalived that way too. That's happened plenty of times in the 70s when it came to those serial killers who would bust into houses. Like, what's the guy's name? The BTK killer, bind, torture, and kill. That dude was breaking into people's houses while they were in the house. Richard Ramirez, the other guy. Like, there's multiple examples. There's no area you can say where a woman will be 100% safe. To use that as an example was definitely something interesting. But hey, let's keep going. This is good. I like this.
Like, I don't know, like, I feel like a consequence of the patriarchy and these norms that we have is that men can't be victims of abuse. Men can't be physically abused by women, and I think that's a problem. We should not have that. If a man is is subject to persistent physical abuse, that should be taken seriously by a woman.
Do you think that with enough manpower we can take down the patriarchy?
With enough manpower? I think with enough societal organization, with enough, like, I don't know. Yeah, work, we can do it, of course. We can restructure society. Of course we can restructure society.
So with enough manpower, we can restructure away from the patriarchy?
With enough change, we can get away from the patriarchy. I don't know, like, you're arguing that, like, because men have to do it, therefore it's invalid or something.
Well, that's kind of what I'm asking is, like, if I ask someone with enough manpower and resources, could you take down the thing that's literally going to be mirroring what you're aggregating in resources? In other words, to take down the patriarchy, you need to find a bunch of strong people to fight against this bunch of strong people, and the bunch of strong people you're going to find are going to look exactly like the collection of people you're going to be fighting against. So, sure, it's never the case where you go, let's revolt against this tyrannical body of men who are impeding on our rights. You never go out and knock on the doors and grab the women first.
I mean, in order to fight? Or,
yeah.
Sure. What? You also wouldn't grab weak men. Like,
well, no, you would.
You would.
Why not?
No. Why? Because
they're still stronger than the women.
Not always. No. You're saying I think there are. I think the echelon of, like, weakest men out there would absolutely be less strong than the average woman.
I'm not sure if you take the same body frame, if you knock on a door,
well, no, okay,
and it's like the same height, right, and even...
Eve McCarroll, what brings you here?
I'd like to go hunting.
Wait. If you're going to go to war, you're going to grab the dude. It's not just because of force, though. Would you agree that men are more likely to exert aggression, even for bad reasons, than women?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so if you're going to war, you would want someone who is able, capable, and willing to exert their aggression on another aggressor. Whereas if it's generally the case, women are a little more timid.
Why are they, though? Why are they more likely to exercise their
That's a good
aggression.
question.
I think it's biology.
I don't know. I don't necessarily think that's the case.
Do you have a son?
Do I have a son? No, I don't.
I do.
Okay.
So are you saying that?
Well, you're raising your son, though.
Well, no, I'm saying that.
Of course, your son's going to reflect your worldview.
Well, no. A 3-year-old, and even beforehand, you're going to notice when you become a father, God willing, which is anti-feminist. You're going to see that there's a clear distinction between boys and girls in their very instinct and the way they even behave and express themselves. And the aggressive ones, the males, are aggressive.
That's 1,000% not true. And if we're going off anecdotal experiences, which is what he's using, his anecdotal experience, I'll use mine. But to be honest, like, no, my son is way more emotional than my daughter. My daughter is actually more aggressive than my son. Genuinely. Like, she is more aggressive than my son. And you know, I've also noticed a lot of times when I'm out there in the world, specifically Mama Bear, she worked at a daycare. She would tell me the boys, yeah, they have aggressive tendencies. But the women are just as aggressive. Like, it's really not any difference. Like, I don't know. Like, as they get older, I think more aggression goes into the men, because definitely you can say men are more aggressive in society. But I think as children, it's really hard to tell what child is more aggressive, what child is more selfish, what child you can tell. The women develop a lot faster, definitely, but that's pretty much it.
You just see it right in front of you.
That is not necessarily the case for all boys
I
whatsoever.
didn't say all.
Sure.
I
No,
said
but even-
generally speaking.
Wait, but you're also raising your son specifically. Everything you do is in a gendered sense. You're raising your son to be what your version.
You don't
of
think
man
we should
is.
affirm gendered society?
I don't necessarily think we should tell people that there's a correct way to be a man or a correct way to be a woman. So no, I don't think that we should raise our sons to be aggressive, to show their, like I don't know, like that aggression is a good way to get what
The
you
male feminist is killing him right now.
want or something like
He's
that.
killing
I'm
him.
not saying that, but ultimately aggression and violence is an excellent way to get what you want. It works better. It's more critically. It's a critical path.
Would you rather your son, primarily when he has a disagreement with someone, like at school or something like that, get into a fist fight with the kid, or would you rather have him have the communication skills to be able to talk that disagreement out?
Well, in that
What would be more
instance, the ideal is to keep them in a system, right, than to fight. We're not talking about whether or not violence is useful every time. Now, just change it. Change it. No,
You didn't answer the question. And again, you would want your son to be able to have the communication skills to talk his way out. You wouldn't want him to be just aggressive unless needed. Now, that's not saying aggression is not needed. You need the ability to be able to protect yourself, but you definitely want your son to have the ability to communicate properly what he wants. That's a problem with men in society. Men don't know how to communicate. They go straight to aggression, and that's probably why most men are in prison.
Often useful or
we're talking about maintain. The reason this came up is we're talking about maintaining society. For instance, let's take another thing. Would I rather the security guard at my school use force to stop an aggressor, or talk to them nicely like the teacher does?
So wait, it would depend on the situation, because
That's right.
But I do absolutely think that in a lot of these situations, de-escalation can be effective and be more effective than just
Violence is great de-escalation.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Are you
serious?
No, wait a second. You're one, assuming that the violence will be successful in its aim, and two, that it won't have other ramifications. I think a society that always deals with its problems violently will actually have worse consequences. I don't think we should encourage kids to beat the shit out of each other.
Nobody's saying that.
Every time, but that's what you're saying.
No, I'm not.
What, violence is a very effective way to get what you want.
I didn't say they ought. I described that it is. You keep confusing ought and descriptions.
No, but first off, I actually don't think it is, because it can become self-defeating. If your way of always resolving conflict is resorting to violence, people will be less likely to associate with you. People will be less likely to be around you. Yeah.
Really? Okay, so, but if you extrapolate that out, because we're talking about societies right now. Is society better with feminism? Is feminism good for society, right?
Yes.
The reason this is such an important topic, this violence and force aspect, is because society itself, no matter how you try to poetically describe your vision of feminism, it's always going to be reliant on the threat of force. And so at this mass scale level, Oliver, you're going to be an advocate for a pointing gun, right, at the society and saying, if you aggress over here, force is going to come in. That's what the violation of a right is, right?
I don't think that's how I would want society to be.
You don't want, if you want society with rights, which is in your opening, feminism, individuals having the same equal rights, equal opportunities, if you want that, you have to enforce it.
If you give employees a budget, they're going to use the whole budget and turn it on, and all in one time.
Of course you do.
If you want that and you have to enforce it, you need to appeal to inequality. It's a contradiction.
What do you mean you have to appeal to inequality? Everyone has to appeal to inequality all the time.
No, specifically with sexes.
No, wait a second. No, because then every man has to appeal to someone who is stronger than him.
Who's a man?
Unless, okay, then all men are at the mercy of the man who is stronger.
That's right,
than
patriarchy. That's descriptively based. Now that you admit that that's actually true, and I conceded that that's true.
Why does that matter?
I'm saying it matters because if you advocate for a feminist society, you're actually, I would argue that rights themselves, feminism is actually sexist, ironically, because feminism, assuming rights, assumes there's a body of men who are going to defend those rights. They don't have the obligation to do that.
Of course people have an obligation to defend those.
Under feminism, why?
Why?
Yeah.
I just think in general everyone should have an obligation to defend those.
Who cares what you think?
Sure, if you don't have any sort of empathy or anyone else other than yourself.
Empathy isn't it, dude. I've seen a video you did. Empathy is an involuntary signal that is perhaps what someone else is experiencing. That doesn't tell you what you ought to do. You're in a debate now arguing feminism is good for society. I bring in what's necessary to keep the good in society and highlight force. I ask you point blank under your feminist view, do men have the obligation, morally, ethically, to uphold law that provides the playground you call feminism, feminist freedom?
Men. Society in general has an obligation, I guess, to maintain itself.
Okay.
But it doesn't follow from that every man has an obligation to uphold society.
I didn't say every man.
Well, then this doesn't have any bearing.
It does bear. It does have bearing because we're talking about a collective, right? We're choosing the people who already exist right now.
Let's choose the stronger men.
There's a bunch of strong men right now.
Let's choose the men that can actually enforce their will.
There's a bunch of men right now who are really strong.
Yes.
They're in uniforms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
They have to be trained. They're in uniforms.
Sure.
Cops, probably too unhealthy for my taste. But let's just say they're all fit.
Okay.
They're in a position where they come in and there's a man or a woman being aggravated, assaulted by someone.
Okay.
Under your system of feminism, because it has to be from a feminist view, why does the collective of mostly men who are the enforcement arm, why do they have an obligation to defend anybody?
Yes, he was just asking. He was going through circular reasoning. He was really just trying to prove a point that didn't even exist. Point blank period. Everybody has an obligation to help everybody in society. And under feminism really doesn't make a difference. We're just more willing to talk it out under feminism than actually go to physical force. But the other guy wasn't denying that physical force isn't needed in society. So I don't see where he contradicted himself. And I don't see where Chad destroyed him. But hey, that's all. Peace.